The night was quiet, almost too quiet. The kind of silence that only exists deep in the countryside, where the nearest streetlight is miles away, and the only sound is the rhythmic hum of cicadas. Inside the modest two-story farmhouse, Daniel Harper was finally getting some rest after a long week of repairing fences and tending to his family's land. His wife, Linda, slept soundly beside him. Down the hall, their son, Jason, was home from his Marine deployment, his first time back in almost 2 years. It was just past 3 a.m. when the peace shattered. A thunderous bang echoed through the house, followed by another, louder, angrier. The front door trembled in its frame. Daniel jolted upright, his heart slamming against his ribs. For a split second, he thought he might be dreaming. But then the third bang came, and this time, the door cracked. "Open up. HOA inspection." A voice bellowed from outside, deep, authoritative, and clearly forced to sound official. Daniel blinked in disbelief. HOA inspection? At 3 in the morning? He muttered under his breath. His mind was foggy, still trying to process the absurdity of what he had just heard. His property was outside city limits, there was no homeowners association here, never had been. Jason was already awake. The Marine training never really left him. He moved like a shadow down the hall, pulling on a pair of jeans and his military-issued shirt. His instincts told him something was wrong, very wrong. The controlled aggression in the man's voice outside was not the calm authority of law enforcement. It was the kind of tone that masked fear and recklessness. Linda appeared at the bedroom door, her voice trembling. "Daniel. What's happening?" "Stay here," he whispered. "Lock the door. Call 911. Jason had already slipped past his father, crouching near the front of the staircase where he had a clear view of the entryway. Through the thin curtains, he could see movement, 2 figures standing on the porch, both wearing dark jackets. One had a flashlight. The other held what looked like a badge clipped to his belt. But even from that distance, Jason could tell it was not regulation. The badge was too shiny, too fake. "Sir, this is the HOA Security Division," one of the men shouted again. "We've had multiple complaints about your property violating code enforcement. We need to conduct an immediate inspection." Daniel shouted back, his voice sharp. "You're out of your mind if you think I'm opening that door at this hour. Get off my property." There was a pause. Then came a low laugh. "Sir, you can either cooperate, or we'll have to escalate this. Don't make us force entry." Jason's muscles tensed. That was the moment he knew, these were not officials, not security, not anyone legitimate. No real authority figure uses force entry on a private home without a warrant, especially not at night. Then came the crash. The door burst inward as one of the men kicked it off its hinges. Splinters flew across the floor. The sound of boots thudded against the wood, followed by the beam of a flashlight slicing through the darkness. Jason did not hesitate. He shouted, his voice loud and commanding. "Freeze! United States Marine! You're trespassing on private property." The intruders froze mid-step. The taller one raised his hands instinctively, but the other, the one holding the fake badge, tried to draw something from his jacket. Jason moved faster. He pulled his father's old hunting rifle from beside the entryway, the same one Daniel had kept loaded for years in case of emergencies. "I said freeze." Jason barked again. The tremor in his voice was gone now, all that remained was the iron tone of a soldier. For several long seconds, no one moved. The intruder with the badge slowly raised his hands, his voice shaky now. Hey, take it easy. We're just..." "Shut up," Jason cut in. You kicked down our door at 3 in the morning pretending to be law enforcement. That's breaking and entering. You're lucky I did not fire already." Linda's voice echoed faintly from upstairs as she spoke to the 911 operator, whispering details of the situation. The men outside began backing up slowly, their confidence melting into fear. We thought this was the other house," the shorter one stammered. "We got the address wrong." Daniel stepped forward now, standing beside his son, his face pale but resolute. "You made the biggest mistake of your life coming here tonight," he said coldly. The intruders bolted. They turned and ran into the dark, sprinting toward an old pickup truck parked by the roadside. Jason watched them go, memorizing the license plate number as the taillights disappeared down the dirt road. For a long moment, the only sound was the wind outside and the faint hum of Linda's panicked breathing over the phone. Jason slowly lowered the rifle and exhaled. "Dad. They weren't just random burglars," he said. "They were pretending to be HOA enforcement. That's organized. Someone wanted to scare us." Daniel looked at the shattered doorway, his mind racing. "Well," he said, voice low and grim, "they picked the wrong house for that." As the sirens began to echo in the distance, red and blue lights cutting through the trees, Jason's eyes narrowed. Whoever had sent those men would not get away with it. And this time, he was not just a son protecting his home, he was a Marine defending his family's honor. By the time dawn broke over the ridge, the Harper farmhouse looked like a crime scene straight out of a movie. 2 sheriff's cruisers sat parked on the dirt road, red and blue lights still flashing faintly against the pale morning light. Yellow tape stretched across the shattered front door. Officers moved in and out of the house, snapping photos, taking statements, and trying to piece together what had happened at 3 a.m. Jason Harper stood by the porch railing, his broad shoulders tense under his gray t-shirt. The chill of the early morning air didn't seem to bother him. His jaw was clenched, eyes sharp, replaying the events in his head over and over, the fake badge, the boots, the way they said HOA inspection. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. Sheriff Collins, a seasoned man in his late 50s with a weathered face and the calm demeanor of someone who had seen too much, approached with a clipboard. "Jason," he said, voice steady. "You said they identified themselves as HOA enforcement?" Jason nodded. "That's right. Claimed they were doing a code inspection. At 3 in the morning. They had badges, fake, cheap plastic ones. Looked like something you'd order online." Collins scratched his beard. "Well, there's no HOA in this area. Closest one is 20 miles east, and they sure don't have armed patrols. My guess, someone sent these guys." Daniel joined them, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. "But who? We don't have enemies. We keep to ourselves. I barely even talk to the neighbors." Collins sighed and flipped open his notepad. "Sometimes that's enough to make enemies these days. People get jealous, land, property, old grudges." Jason's eyes drifted to the patrol car where one of the officers was bagging the fake badge and a flashlight as evidence. "This wasn't just jealousy," he said firmly. "They were organized. They had a truck waiting by the road. They knew exactly where to go." The sheriff nodded slowly. "You said you got a license plate number, right?" Jason pulled a small notepad from his back pocket, old Marine habit, and handed it over. "Tennessee plate. Black pickup, probably mid-2000s model, front bumper dented on the left side." Collins scribbled the info. "Good eye. Well, run it through the system." Inside the house, Linda sat at the kitchen table, wrapped in a blanket, hands trembling slightly as she sipped her coffee. She looked up as Jason entered. "The door," she whispered, her voice cracking. "They could have heard us." Jason knelt beside her, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "They didn't. Because we were ready. Because you called for help." Her eyes met his, filled with gratitude and lingering fear. "Do you really think it was someone from around here?" Jason hesitated before answering. "I think it was personal." A few hours later, the sheriff's radio crackled to life. "Collins, dispatch here. We ran that plate number. It's registered to a guy named Rick Holden, lives about 10 miles out, trailer park near Route 67. No active warrants, but he's got a history of minor assault charges and impersonating an officer." The sheriff's expression darkened. "Well, that explains a lot," he muttered. He looked at Jason. "You feel like taking a drive?" Jason raised an eyebrow. "You're letting me tag along?" "You're a Marine," Collins said with a small smirk. "And it's your front door," he kicked in. "Just stay behind me when we get there." An hour later, they pulled up to the rusted trailer park. The morning sun glinted off the dented vehicles and overgrown weeds. It smelled like gasoline and bad choices. Collins motioned for backup to stay close as he and Jason approached the trailer marked number 12. The door opened before they could even knock. Rick Holden, mid-40s, balding, wearing a stained flannel, stepped out, eyes darting nervously between the sheriff and Jason. "Morning, Rick," Collins said evenly. "We need to talk." Rick swallowed hard. "About what?" Collins tilted his head. "About the fake HOA raid you pulled last night." Rick's eyes widened. "What?" No, I didn't." Jason stepped forward, arms crossed. "Save it. I saw your face. You were holding the flashlight." Rick's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. His eyes flicked toward the truck parked behind him, the same black pickup Jason had described. Collins nodded toward it. "We've got your plate on camera, Rick. You kicked down a door, impersonated law enforcement, and threatened a family. You want to start explaining, or do I cuff you now?" Rick's shoulders slumped. "It wasn't my idea," he muttered. Collins narrowed his eyes. "Then whose was it?" Rick hesitated, then sighed. "A woman. Said she was with the Homeowners Alliance Committee or something like that. Paid us $500 each to scare the family in the farmhouse, said they were violating property code, keeping junk vehicles out front." Jason's jaw tightened. "That's a lie. My property's clean." Rick shrugged helplessly. "I don't know, man. She drove a white SUV, fancy clothes, red hair, sunglasses even at night. Said her name was Karen. Didn't give a last name." Collins and Jason exchanged a look. Jason's voice dropped to a dangerous calm. "So she paid you to harass us?" Rick nodded quickly. "I swear, man, we didn't mean to." "Save it," Collins said, snapping cuffs on him. "You'll have plenty of time to talk at the station." As they drove back, Jason stared out the window, fists clenched. A woman, calling herself Karen, leading some fake HOA crusade, had paid criminals to intimidate his family. Now it was personal. He turned to the sheriff, voice low but burning with resolve. "Find her, and I'll make sure she never messes with another family again." Collins gave a grim nod. "Oh, well, find her. And something tells me she's not going to like how this ends." The following morning, Jason Harper stood outside the sheriff's department, watching the sunrise burn orange across the small Tennessee town. He hadn't slept a minute. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that red-haired woman, Karen, standing smugly in front of his home, pretending to have authority over his life. The fact that she had hired thugs to break in under the cover of HOA enforcement made his blood boil. Inside, Sheriff Collins was already at work, talking to Detective Lane over a spread of photos and reports on the evidence board. When Jason entered, Collins looked up. "You're just in time. We've been digging." Jason crossed his arms. "Please tell me you found something useful." The sheriff nodded. We traced Rick Holden's phone records. Guess what? 2 calls came in from a prepaid burner cell registered yesterday morning. The signal pinged near a gated community called Oakwood Estates, 10 miles west of your place. Jason frowned. Oakwood Estates. That's the new development near the lake, right? $1 million houses, manicured lawns, all run by some self-important HOA. Exactly, Collins said, tapping the photo of a woman on the board. And this? This is Karen Matheson. HOA president. Owns a white Lexus SUV. Red hair. The same woman Rick described. Jason's jaw tightened. That's her. That's the one. Detective Lane leaned back in his chair. She's clever. Covered her tracks well, but not well enough. We found security footage from a gas station 2 hours before your home was hit. She's there, talking to Holden and another guy. We've got timestamps, faces, and a license plate. Jason's lips curved into a grim smile. So what's the plan? Collins exhaled. We can't just storm in there without cause. But if she's impersonating law enforcement or hiring people to harass civilians, that's criminal conspiracy. We need proof that she ordered it. Jason thought for a moment. What if I get it? Lane raised an eyebrow. You planning to go undercover, Marine? Jason smiled faintly. Let's just say I've done worse. That afternoon, Jason drove to Oakwood Estates, dressed casually in jeans and a navy polo shirt. His truck, a restored 1985 Ford, looked out of place among the luxury SUVs and spotless driveways. He parked near the entrance and walked toward the HOA office, a pristine building with marble pillars and a big silver plaque reading Oakwood Homeowners Association. Inside, he was greeted by a woman at the desk, smiling politely. Good afternoon, sir. Do you have an appointment? Not yet, Jason said smoothly. But I was hoping to speak with Mrs. Matheson. Karen, right? I'm thinking of buying property here. The receptionist's eyes brightened. Oh. Of course. She's in a meeting right now, but if you don't mind waiting. Before she could finish, the door behind her opened. Karen Matheson stepped out, holding a folder, her red hair styled perfectly, her expression one of effortless superiority. Jason had to resist the urge to confront her right then and there. Instead, he smiled. Mrs. Matheson? Jason Harper. I was told you're the one to talk to about Oakwood. Karen's gaze flicked up and down, analyzing him in a single glance. Well, Mr. Harper, I suppose I can spare a few minutes. Come in. Her office was immaculate, modern furniture, framed HOA awards, and a massive window overlooking the neighborhood. She motioned for him to sit. So, she began, crossing her legs, you're interested in moving here? Jason leaned back casually. Thinking about it. But I heard a few interesting stories. Something about enforcing property codes even outside HOA limits. That true? Karen's smile twitched, almost imperceptibly. Oh, I wouldn't say enforcing. We simply encourage the community to maintain standards. Some people don't take pride in their property. Jason tilted his head. Even people who don't live here? She laughed softly. You'd be surprised how many folks outside our gates lower the area's value. Sometimes a little nudge reminds them what's expected. He pretended to chuckle. That sounds like a full-time job. Oh, it is, she said proudly. Especially when certain people think they're above the rules. Jason's tone sharpened, just slightly. The arrest of Karen Matheson sent shockwaves through Oakwood Estates. For years, she had ruled the gated community like a self-appointed queen, fining people for grass length, shaming families for Christmas lights that clashed with the aesthetic and throwing parties where she boasted about her connections in law enforcement. Now, her perfectly polished image was crumbling under the harsh light of truth. By sunrise, the news had already spread: HOA president arrested for conspiracy and home invasion. Local media vans were parked outside the Oakwood gates, and residents whispered in disbelief as sheriff's deputies moved in and out of her marble-floored home. Jason Harper stood by his truck across the street, watching as evidence technicians carried out boxes of documents and devices. Sheriff Collins walked up beside him, coffee in hand. "She's going to have a rough morning," Collins said dryly. Jason nodded. "Any word from Holden?" The sheriff smirked. "He's singing like a bird. Said she promised to teach that veteran a lesson for embarrassing her in front of the HOA board. Claimed it was just to scare you a little, but breaking into someone's house with fake badges crosses a few lines." Jason exhaled slowly, a weight lifting from his chest. "My wife can finally sleep without checking the locks every 15 minutes. Collins clapped him on the shoulder. "You did good, Jason. The recording sealed it. You got her to confess in her own words." Jason smiled faintly. "Guess all those years in the Marines paid off." By afternoon, Karen sat inside the interrogation room at the county station, her red hair now tangled, her sharp posture gone. Across from her sat Detective Lane, calm and methodical. "Mrs. Matheson," he began, "you've been charged with conspiracy to commit burglary, impersonation of a law enforcement officer, and harassment. The evidence against you is substantial." Karen's voice cracked. "You don't understand. I was protecting our neighborhood. He was ruining property values with that ugly house of his." Lane raised an eyebrow. "So your solution was to send armed men to his home?" She slammed her palms on the table. "They weren't armed. They were supposed to talk to him. Rick got carried away, that's all." The detective leaned forward. "He had a taser, Mrs. Matheson. That counts as a weapon. You planned the entire thing. You gave them fake badges. You even paid them cash to avoid a paper trail. You thought no one would trace it back to you." Karen's lips trembled. "I didn't mean for it to go that far." Lane's tone softened. "You had a choice. You just thought you were untouchable." She stared down at the table, the weight of her arrogance pressing down like a storm cloud. For the first time in years, Karen Matheson felt powerless. Meanwhile, Oakwood Estates was in chaos. The board members called an emergency meeting in the clubhouse, with half the residents showing up demanding answers. Did she really send people to attack a veteran? One man shouted. "She fined me $500 for painting my mailbox black." A woman added angrily. "I knew she was crazy, but this?" The interim HOA chair, a nervous accountant named Ted Lawson, held up his hands. "Please, everyone, calm down. We're cooperating fully with law enforcement. Mrs. Matheson's actions do not reflect the values of Oakwood." "Then why did you all let her run things like a dictator for 5 years?" Another voice cut in. The crowd erupted again, voices overlapping in frustration. Cameras flashed as reporters stood outside, capturing the implosion of one of the town's most exclusive neighborhoods. Jason, watching from his truck, couldn't help but shake his head. "Guess the queen finally lost her crown," he muttered. His wife, Emily, sitting beside him, smiled faintly. "Maybe now people will stop thinking HOA means royalty." A week later, Jason was invited to speak at the town council meeting. The mayor personally thanked him for helping expose corruption and praised Sheriff Collins' team for their swift action. When Jason stepped up to the microphone, the applause caught him off guard. He cleared his throat. "I didn't do this for recognition. I just wanted my family to be safe. No one, no HOA, no self-appointed authority, should have the power to intimidate people in their own homes." He paused, glancing toward the back where reporters sat scribbling notes. "If there's one thing I've learned," he said, "it's that standing up to bullies doesn't require violence. Just truth. And sometimes, a little patience." The crowd applauded again, louder this time. The following morning, Jason returned home to his quiet stretch of land. His dog barked from the porch, tail wagging, while his son played with toy soldiers in the dirt. Emily waved from the doorway. It was peaceful, finally. But as Jason walked to the mailbox, he noticed something wedged inside, a small white envelope with the Oakwood HOA logo on the corner. He opened it cautiously. Inside was a letter from Ted Lawson, the new HOA chair. "Dear Mr. Harper," it read. "On behalf of the Oakwood Estates Board, please accept our sincerest apologies for the misconduct of our former president. The HOA has voted unanimously to dissolve all outreach activities outside our jurisdiction. As a token of goodwill, we'd like to offer you a lifetime membership at our community lake and a full reimbursement for any property damage caused by this incident." Jason chuckled, shaking his head. Now they're trying to make friends. Emily stepped beside him, reading the letter over his shoulder. "Are you going to accept?" He folded it neatly and tucked it back in the envelope. "Nope. I like my peace and quiet just fine." She smiled. "Good." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Jason looked out at his property, his land, his freedom, and his family safe inside their home. After weeks of chaos, he finally felt something he hadn't in a long time: calm. And somewhere across town, in a cold concrete cell, Karen Matheson was realizing that no title, no fake authority, could save her from the one law she could never manipulate: justice.